Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2. In our last episode we met the Red-Headed League and oh boy, these guys have issues. So, let's get going, shall we? No. No. What do you mean by a little tussle, exactly? Buff, he was nothing. Just a minor incident. The Falso Inspector, he was a real piece of work. A couple. What happened? It was a disaster. Give him a nice room, and what does he do, huh? In the middle of the night, he tries to escape through the ventilator. Can you blame him? We chased him, bien sûr, and we caught him again. Can you blame us? Wait, you didn't shoot the man in your haste, did you? Who do you think we are? Of course not. I simply got hold of him again and took him back to the room.
Excuse me.
Mr. De Rossi, is something wrong? Me. Something Mr. De Rosso said seemed to make you, well, it seemed to make you act even more strangely than usual. What was that all about? Cavolo, at times like that, you don't want to have the capo after you, believe me. And I speak from the personal esperienza. Personal experience? That is enough, Peppino. There is no need to say more. The truth is, the night before we put the Red-Headed League plan into action, I was scared. It was not fair to the capo, but I tried to run away. It's a shame you didn't manage it. Oof! But the capo here, he came after me like a turbine, And he dragged me back to the house, kicking and screaming. I still have the bruises to prove it. A capo. Bruises, you say? Ah, you want to see, You want to see my fantastical bruises? That's enough now, Peppino. No one wants to look at any part of you. Ouch! Wow! What are to do, I show you or I don't. I show you or I don't. You do, now. Allora, if everyone wants to see, then I do it. This could be taken so out of context. Ouch. Echo, you see? He's very visible, That red ring around your neck? You got that when you drank. That red ring! I've seen that before. See, the capo, sometimes he's very rough. And I said that's enough. Peppino's neck is nothing to do what we're talking about here. You have my word. I don't think so. I've seen that before. About this red ring around Mr. Rossi's neck. It's important. It's very important. I'm gonna have to ask you to amend your testimony with details about that mark on your neck. Aye, capo. You see? Everyone is interested in what I say, Ugh. Very well, you would. Your testimony as requested, Mr. De Rossi. CC, you really want to know. He tried to escape, but the couple put a collar on him and dragged him back like what he did to me, see?
Hold it!
Are you saying that red mark was caused by... CC, a big collar from the leather. A leather collar? Is this true, Mr. De Rosso? We had a St. Bernard at home when I was younger. It is a souvenir from that time, with a very strong chain. A strong chain? Can you put that around your friend's neck? I'm sorry. I was so angry that he was leaving me alone. You did not have to tie the chain to the leg of the feather, though. I would not have tried to run. I didn't get it. You didn't do that to Inspector Gregson as well, did you? Treated the people equal. Is the couple here's motto, eh? It's starting to sound a lot more like a prison all of a sudden. The capo is a tough, but the capo is a rough. Ugh. I should have done it. So, the following morning when you released the inspector, he added a red ring around his neck, just like me. Peppino, s'il vous plaît, leave it now. Now you know, eh? The couple here, you don't want to entangle with him, eh? But for the inspector, he's not so bad. Hang on one moment. Okay, we're back. So, we weren't supposed to press that, but we could press that. But the big thing here is, he doesn't have the neck.
Objection.
So, the day before his body was discovered, Inspector Gregson was taken prisoner while working incognito. No, it was not like that. It was hardly prison. It was an invitation to stay. It was homely. However you describe it, there's one glaring inconsistency that remains. What inconsistency is this, counsel? I would ask the court to look closely at this photograph of the victim, Inspector Gregson. There is no red mark on his neck. You will see that there is no red ring visible around his neck. Eh? But that makes no sense. It was me who took the collar off the man in the morning. And I saw the red bruises on his neck, just like I have. Given that the mark is still clearly visible on this witness's neck, we'd expect to see bruising on the victim, who's put in the collar more recently than Mr. De Rossi. Indeed. That is most peculiar. But what we tell you, huh? Huh? We say this from the beginning, many times. Peppino is right. The man in the photograph is someone different to the man we held captives that night. Order! It would appear then that on the day before the incident, the man who visited the park on Lime Street posing as an incognito inspector was not Inspector Gregson at all.
Objection.
If that's true, however, how do you explain the inspector's identification? This is a genuine identification book issued by Scotland Yard. It's inconceivable someone who could have stolen such an important item from the inspector. The prosecution made that assertion itself. Someone pulled the old switcheroo on us. And we also know that the inspector had made a note about the red-headed league in his diary for that day. Which surely means we can't divorce the two events completely. The inconsistency noted by the defense is most troubling. If it were the real Inspector Gregson whom these two red-headed gentlemen encountered, the fact that no bruising can be seen around his neck defies explanation. But equally, if they actually encountered an imposter, how did that person come to be in possession of the real inspector's identification? Does the counsel have some plausible explanation, counsel? The whole thing defies explanation. It's for precisely these occasions that we keep meticulous notes in the court record, Mr. Naruto. Because those are the facts. And the facts cannot lie. No, the facts can't lie. And even when they point to something so incredible, it's almost unbelievable. I know who it is. I know who we actually saw. Well, my lord, the true identity of the person who turned up in the park for the Red-Headed League's enrollment is revealed by information in the court record, I believe. Good gracious! Very tantalizing, Mr. Naruto. So why don't you help us all to see whatever truth it is you've apparently seen? Who exactly was this inspector that appeared before Mr. DeRosso and Mr. DeRossi? He was an imposter. Though it seems incredible, I admit, the undeniable facts point to only one thing. Since no bruising can be seen on the victim's neck, the person who these two red-headed men took that prisoner that day cannot have been Inspector Gregson. In other words, your whole argument up to now has been a waste of time.
Objection!
On the contrary, I haven't finished. What? There's no bruising on the victim's neck, so the question immediately posed next is, who exactly was this man in the park on Lime Street found to be carrying Inspector Gregson's identification? See, that's right. We tell the same story every time. Whoever this man was, the capo dragged him from a pillar to a post with a dog collar. Mon Dieu, Peppino, I was not so harsh as you say, huh? So who is that Fusso Inspector, eh? Who was he? Clearly, the defense has an idea about that. About the true identity of the man these two imprisoned that day, or that night. I must ask the counsel for the defense to elaborate post-haste. Who did the witness encounter in the park posing as Inspector Gregson? It's Gossip. He's got the ring around his neck.
Take that!
Goodness me! Isn't that one of the witnesses who was in the stand in this very courtroom earlier today? A nameless man whose only occupation appears to be peddling hearsay to passers-by.
Objection!
What on earth would a street seller be doing with a police inspector's identification papers? Witnesses! Is this the man or not? What has happened to his lip? See, this man is not for the red-headed league, eh? He's not looking for the twisted lip leak, no? Ha 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 ha. Perhaps rather than making such rash claim next time, you should bite your lip instead. It seems improbable, yes, but one undeniable fact remains. During his testimony earlier, I noted something around the man's neck. A red ring of bruising. Eh? What? The defense demands that Mr. Gossip be brought back to the stand. Order! Order! Bailiff! Bring the aforementioned witness back into the courtroom. Immediately! There it is. Well, I never. An undeniable ring of bruising indeed. And identical to that of the witness beside him. I'm sorry on it, eh? I've always had this made. It's a birthmark, isn't it? A birthmark, you say? I assume the reason you've been recalled to the stand has been explained to you. Hey, something about an inspector again. But I'm telling you, you got it all wrong as usual. You're denying all knowledge of it. Well, of course I am. Are you trying to kill me with all this nonsense, eh? Well, at least you'll have more stories to peddle back on Fresno Street, won't you? Well, now we're going to need you to testify again. And you, Mr. DeRosso and Mr. DeRossi, I'm sure you'll cooperate, won't you? Do we have any choice? We are in a bigger trouble, eh, couple? That's quite enough dilatory chatter. What even is that word? Proceed with the testimony. Alright, here we go. The man who claimed to be an inspector that day was definitely not this man. He's right, see. You think we would forget these grand lips, huh? I never leave Fresno Street, alright? I'm not interested in any red-headed league. I'm all alone in the world, me. I've no kinfolk or nothing. Why would I be involved in something like that? Just look at me, eh? Does it look like I could carry off a disguise with a face like this? I think that lip of yours is a disguise. It would certainly appear that we have the wrong man. What have I been telling you, huh? There was no need for this pointless testimony. Ugh. That's right. I'm just a simple peddler, remember? Fresno Street's all I know. How would I have come by a police inspector's identification book, eh? Well, yes. That's hard to explain. But... a brief cross-examination, I think, counsel. Very brief. Ugh. Isn't there anyone in this courtroom who thinks I might be onto something? I stand steadfastly at your side as always, Mr. Naruhodo. Nothing from you. Alright. I never leave Fresno Street, alright? Sir? Yeah, right.
Hold it!
So, you heard of the Red-Headed League, had you? You don't get a name like Gossip for nothing, eh? It's my business to know what's going on in town. I sold that tasty tidbit to a fair few redheads that came past me. Just between us, I've got so much scoff for it. Well, he does have a very red nose, if that counts. Who knows? That one's awful. As you can see, my own hair's not got a tint of red in it. In any case, Fresno Street, small patch. You'll catch me siding off to some other part of town. No, sir, not likely. Oh, really? What have you got to say?
Excuse me.
Mr. DeRosso. Oui? Can I help you? Did Mr. Gossip's words now just lead you to remember something relevant, perhaps? It was the other day when I was looking for a place near the park, small house or something. To the headquarters of your Red-Headed League, yes? I visited an housing agent on Lime Street, and there I saw him. This man was paying money to the agent. What? Mr. Gossip? With a housing agent? Oui. He had some kind of contract in his, and they were clearly discussing terms. But no. You're mistaken, chum. I never left Fresno Street, like I said before. You're mistaken me for someone else. Someone with the same face. No, the capo's right. I remember it too. He was a panda man with the banknotes. With notes? Like I said, that wasn't me. Was it not, huh? I was curious why this man with the dirty clothes had so much money. So I looked at the name on the papers. And what name was written? Mr. Gossip? No, this man, he lies. He tells you that he has no name. But in fact, his name is Hugh Boone, huh? He's better than Mr. Gossip, I think, eh? Hugh Boone, huh? No! I'm a predator of tidbits of information, like I said, on Fresno Street. And that's that. I don't much like folk talking about my personal life. Indeed. And it is not the intention of the court to invade the privacy of the witnesses. Very well, I shall respect your witnesses, sir. Your wishes, sir. The aforementioned names shall be redacted from all court records of this trial, assuming no objections.
Objection.
I'm sorry, my lord, but the defense does object. Because the name just mentioned has a very deep significance to this case. Good gracious! You similarly object, Prosecutor Osogi. As it happens, my lord, that particular name has already been mentioned during today's proceedings. Well, I never. In what capacity? Hugh Boone. The name of the leaseholder of the room. Let me put this very simply. The victim's body was discovered in your rented room. I suggest, sir, that you start talking. Well, alright. I suppose that won't be the case, eh? your real name is Hugh Boone. Just between us, I don't like to blow me on a trumpet, but there's no fun in peddling tidbits in town. So I happen to be able to afford a grubby little room in a falling down backstreet townhouse. You do? And once every 6 months I go and pay the rent to the agent on Lone Street. I remember now. There was 2 vulgar redheads in there last time. Aye, if either of us is a vulgar, he's a not a me. Sink again, Peppino. Why didn't you bring this up before? Hey, Schlock, I told you already. I'm not talking about my personal life. I'm a tidbit peddler as far as everyone else is concerned. No fuss. You will update your testimony to include this most surprising revelation, Mr. Boone. If I must. So the leaseholder Scotland Yard has been looking for since the body was discovered, has been here under our noses all along. I read the room where that fellow was found, it's true. What difference did it make? Oh, really?
Hold it!
I didn't mean to do that. I don't think so. You might be right. Anyway, that mark on your neck is just too much. Well, what's a fellow to do then, eh? You don't believe me? We're at an impasse. And there's nothing I can do but flick me lips. I didn't actually mean to do that. I meant back.
Objection!
There. That's what we do. If you have no kinfolk, as you put it, then explain why it is that among the sparse furnishings, we found this photograph in the room. I presume, as you've been renting the room, that this photograph belongs to you, does it not? Oh, well... Mr. Boone, drop the pretense, and tell the court exactly who you really are. What do you mean? I'm a peddler. I keep telling you so. You don't really need to bother with me. Please, just leave it alone. As the man says, leave it alone. Whatever the truth is about this man's life, it has no bearing on this case. Because it's simply not possible he impersonated Inspector Gregson.
Objection!
How can you be so sure? Just look at the man. No amount of disguise could ever hide those unmissable features.
Objection!
The unmissable features are the disguise. We were to look at the other way around. What do you mean? Yes, counsel, what do you mean? Well, there's no denying Mr. Boone's lip is very prominent indeed. But consider the possibility that his prominent lip is itself part of an elaborate disguise. Oh, we're onto something. Then hiding that prominent feature, in other words, revealing his true face, would make an utterly impenetrable disguise. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Hugh Boone? Hey! Good witness, are you still hiding the truth from this court? If that's a disguise, then underneath it, his true identity must be... Yes, that's right. There's really only one person he could really be. My lord, the defense believes it can reveal Mr. Boone's true identity to the court. No. Please, no. Very well then, counsel. What is the true identity of this peddler who goes simply by the name of Gossip on the street? Gossip on the streets? Vigil in the sheets, I guess. Daily Vigil. Your real name is actually Mr. Vigil, isn't it? Mr. Daily Vigil. Ah! I don't recall that name, Counsel. Who is this Mr. Vigil? It's a name I encountered yesterday, my lord. It has to do with a certain client of Mr. Herlock Sholmes. A young gentlewoman came to the detective asking him to locate her missing husband. The woman in this photograph, in fact, this is Mrs. Vigil. What? From what I understand, you haven't returned home since the night before the inspector was found dead. But of course, on that night, you were being held captive by the two red-headed League men. And last night, you were put up by the prosecution service in preparation for testifying in this trial. Because we'd been led to believe that you, Miss Venus, and Mr. Sandwich were all homeless. Being important witnesses in this case, we needed to know where we could find you, of course. And that explains why you've not only been unable to return home, but also unable to contact your wife, who's been beside herself with worry, waiting for you at the Vigil residence. Now, you just hold on a minute. I have the first idea what I'm talking about. Really? It's a simple enough matter to confirm my suspicions. All we have to do is pull off that disguise. No! Please! Bailiff, brace up a sponge and a washbowl at once. Mr. De Rosso and Mr. De Rossi, you will restrain the witness. Oui, my lord. Si, my lord. Ooh la la! Ah! No, no! Stop! Get off me! Help! There he is, in the flesh. Well, we are now seeing your true features, I presume. Lift your head, sir, so the court can see your face. It would appear that the defense counsel's assertion was entirely correct. This has all been a very elaborate deception. So, witnesses, tell the court, have you seen this man before? I don't believe it, but... See, there is no question. This is the inspector we saw in the park. Extraordinary. On the day of the Red-Headed League enrollment, the man claiming to be Inspector Gregson who appeared before Mr. De Rosso and Mr. De Rossi in the park was you disguised as the inspector, or rather, was you posing as the inspector in no disguise at all. Mr. Vigil was formerly employed as the chief warder at Barclay Prison. The chief warder? Then your career had promise. Why would you quite possibly... Well, you would quite possibly become the future governor of the prison. What on earth have you been doing peddling little tittle-tattle on Fresno Street? Well, it's been 10 years since Mr. Vigil worked at the prison. 10 years? I'm really dreadfully sorry about all of this. Yes, it's true. I'm Daily Vigil. And you were the chief warder at Barclay Prison 10 years ago. So where did Mr. Hugh Boone come from? Boone is the other me. It's a name I invented. Well, evidently, there's a great deal under the surface here. I'll explain everything. I'll tell you just how wretched my life has become. As you say, it was 10 years ago that my employment at Barclay's chief warder came to an end. Having left the prison service, I searched for some new occupation by which to earn a wage. But times were hard in London, and I found no suitable engagements at all. In desperation one day, I turned my hand at selling wares on Fresno Street. But your wife appears to know nothing of this. She still maintains that you are the chief warder at Barclay Prison. I was utterly determined my wife should not know of my failings, which is why I've never told her. I opened an account at the bank under the name of Hugh Boone, and I rented the cheapest room I could find on Fresno Street, the scene of the very crime we're investigating. Yes, that's right. A place from which I could emerge every morning at 8 as a squalid peddler, and transform myself back every evening at 5 into a well-dressed man about town before returning home. That quickly became my daily routine. I was puzzled by the lack of furniture in the room. But that explains it. But why on earth didn't you just tell us this in the first place? I have a wife, sir, and 2 sons. And without wishing to sound self-conceited, they regard me with some pride. I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them. So instead, you decided to conceal your occupation from them. Yes. I've made such a terrible mess of everything. Still, one thing doesn't add up. No matter how many tidbits of information you could sell to passing gentlemen, even at 6 pence apiece, you couldn't hope to match the salary you must have commanded as chief warder of the prison. No, he couldn't. Very true. You have kept your family in comfort, despite 10 years of somewhat misbegotten employment. That was all thanks to Inspector Gregson. What? Inspector Gregson? What on earth? It was some years after I'd invented Boone and begun my other life as a street seller. He, the inspector, that is, recognized me one day. Do you mean to say the victim was an acquaintance of yours? I knew him from my time working at the prison. When he saw what I'd become, he was deeply troubled for me and my family. And from that day forward, he visited me on Fresno Street with increasing regularity. Then one day, he asked me if I would carry out a secret assignment for him. A secret? What was it? I was to impersonate the inspector. What? Impersonate him? We always met that little room so the inspector could brief me. Visit Orxie tomorrow and take a statement from the proprietress. It was always something along those lines. Surveillance work, interviewing people. On those occasions, he would lend me his identification so people would believe who I was. My instructions were to make an impression, to let people know that Inspector Gregson had been at work. And for those services, he compensated me financially. A Scotland Yard inspector willingly relinquished his identification into your care with intent to deceive. As I'm sure I need not point out, is a very serious criminal offense. But why? What was the point of you impersonating him? I truthfully do not know. All I can say is that the inspector warned me on numerous occasions. Now remember, Vigil, honor your solemn word. You don't blab about this to anyone, alright? Ever. Even if, well, if I end up a croaker. In time, he started to bring papers with him to the room as well. It became something of a second office for him. So, in fact, the person who declared himself to be Inspector Gregson at the park on Lime Street was really... Yes, it was me, acting on the inspector's orders. As usual, I removed my boon disguise, and then went as instructor to the park, armed with the inspector's identification book. It never occurred to me that the bruise on my neck might give me away. Wow, that blew this one open. Well, it would seem this confession completely destroys the defense's case. Explain yourself, Prosecutor Ryunosuke. My learned friend's assertion was as follows. The victim was killed at another location on the day before his corpse was discovered, at the hands of these two red-headed league men, when they imprisoned the inspector. But no, that can't be. Ow. After all, it wasn't the inspector who went to the park that day. It was me. Oh goodness. Finally, we have clarity. We had nothing to do with this, the murder of the inspector. And merci, Monsieur de la Defense, for proving it. What? Ah! Ow! Well, there goes our case. Order! 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 Indeed, it would appear that we have reached a de facto conclusion of sorts. These witnesses had no involvement in the murder of the victim. As proven, somewhat ironically, by the defense. I hereby call an end to the cross-examination.
Hold it.
Kazuma? Pardon me, my lord, but with your permission, I would like to pose one further question to the witness. Kazuma? What question, counsel? It concerns the events of 10 years ago. I believe you would have been present at a very significant execution that was carried out at the time. Oh, he's talking about the professor. The execution of the professor, Genshin Asogi, his father. I want to know exactly what your involvement was. Oh, answer me, man. One moment, counsel. Is this related to the current case? Naturally. It is the prosecution's belief that this case and the events of 10 years ago are inextricably linked. Does the defense concur, counsel? Kazuma, you're not yourself. You're not as calm and collected as usual. Poor Kazuma-sama. No wonder he's acting this way. Mr. Vigil's memories of what happened 10 years ago would tell the tale of Genshin Asogi's last moments. His own father. I know. I do understand that. But even so... Professor Prosecutor Asogi, do you genuinely believe that this question requires an answer in order to learn the truth behind Inspector Gregson's death? I need you to trust me. Please. Very well. And the defense has no objection. I see. In that case, you will answer the question, witness. The truth is, I remember very little of that time. You've forgotten? I'm sorry to say yes. As I said, I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. But for some peculiar reason, my memory of the events leading up to that moment is extremely hazy. Does that not strike you as strange, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, 10 years is a long time, but to have forgotten the reason why he left such an important job. Yeah, you're right. And not only that, Mr. Vigil's claim contradicts what we already know. The human spirit is a fragile thing. It's broken all too easily. Which is why we have a tendency to wrap it up for protection. Sorry, the human spirit. I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean. When we experience pain and suffering we feel unable to bear, we block it out, obliterate it from our memories, seal it away. But it never truly leaves us. If the seal is broken, the memories resurface. And when they do, that fragile spirit may finally be crushed. But I really don't. Kazuma-sama? But if it must be crushed, then so be it. Because the truth will not stay buried. It's coming out, one way or another. This is another thing that can be taken another way. Right, now I understand. It's clear what his intentions are. He means to expose the truth at any cost. Perhaps if I pointed out the contradiction in what Mr. Vigil claimed earlier, it might cause some crucial memories to return to him. But should I? Should I present the evidence or not? We're gonna have to do it. I have no idea how this is gonna go, but this is a court of law, and I have a duty to pursue the truth. Mr. Vigil, I'd like you to look at this. Evidence that clearly contradicts your versions of events.
Take that!
Just a few moments ago, you made the following statement. I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. Well, yes. In other words, you claim to have left the post of Chief Warder of your own volition. Well, yes, of course. Why? Tell me. You remember seeing this document before? No, I don't. This is a dismissal notice, ordering the immediate termination of a prison staff member's employment. A dismissal notice? And the name on the notice is yours, Mr. Vigil. What? What? It's mine? So, you didn't resign from the prison service at all. For some reason, you were dismissed as Chief Warder from Barclay. No, there's been some mistake. I'm sure. I'm sure I tendered my resignation. The dismissal notice is nonsense. Isn't it? If you were forcibly dismissed, there must have been good reason. Clearly, you did something. Mr. Vigil, it's time to break the seal and have you remember. According to the few remaining records, the final execution you supervised was on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. And on that day, something very serious took place at Barclay Prison. The 17th of June. Was that the professor's execution? Professor. As you were the chief warder at the time, it stands to reason that you would have been present throughout the proceedings. It does sound familiar. And yet, that execution never took place. The convict, ostensibly executed earlier that day, later re-emerged from his grave. The convict came back to life? In the cemetery in the middle of the night, there was a witness. However, the witness claims that the moment after he saw the convict clambering out of his grave, a gunshot rang out from over his shoulder, and the bullet pierced the professor's chest, killing him instantly. Those may have been the professor's actual last moments. Yes. Seeing as you were in charge of overseeing executions at the time, you must know the truth about what really happened. It's in your head, somewhere deep down. Well, Chief Warder Daily Vigil, I know there are memories in your head that can explain what happened on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. And now it's time for you to drag them up. Mr. Vigil. Yes, the whole prison. It was complete chaos. The prisoner escaped. He was killed in the cemetery. The shocking news ripped through Broccoli like a hurricane. What? What? Order! Order! Do you mean to say, Mr. Vigil, that your memories of time at the time of return? My head, it's like some floodgates have been opened. The images, the screams. Oh my goodness. The papers. There were reports, articles about a man who'd seen a ghost. Yes, Enoch Drebber. But surely those reports were exaggerated. There were traces at the scene. Traces of what? In Lowgate Cemetery, at plot number 139. Blood. Lots of blood. That's where the man was buried, of course. Obviously, something terrible had happened there. The depths of conspiracy and depravity from which this tale is emerging are quite staggering. I've reviewed the police records from that time extensively. A thorough investigation was conducted by Scotland Yard to ascertain how the convict managed to escape in the first place. And the conclusion reached by the investigating team was that a member of the prison staff must have been involved. Are you suggesting a prison warder abetted a man's bid for freedom? Yes. Yes, and I was suspected of doing it. Of using that mass murderer's execution as a way to help him escape. You did what? I remember now. The horror of it all is coming back to me. One evening, a few days after the execution, some detectives came to the prison. I was called to the governor's office at the top of the watchtower. I'm sorry, Daly. This is a serious business, but I cannot help you now. As Chief Warder, you were responsible for overseeing the execution of 4A. Well, seems the fellas at Scotland Yard want to have a few wee words with you about it. You better pack your things, laddie. You're to attend in person. As soon as he told me that, my mind just went completely blank. And the next thing I knew, the professor, the most hated killer in our country's history. And I let him escape. I'm finished. My life is over. Order! Bailiff, fetch the doctor at once. Court is adjourned for the day with immediate effect.
So, with Mr. Vigil's collapse, proceedings came to an abrupt end for the day. Once again overshadowed by the legacy of that notorious killer, appearing like a cursed ghost ship on a foggy ocean. Lord Van Zeeks, Mr. Vigil, Cosimo, and Gregson. All of them bound by invisible chains anchored to the same wreckage in the murky depths of the past. But the miraculous light that had been trying to cut through the gloom and shine on those tragic events was playing on the edges of the truth at last.
Wow. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.